And we're back with another edition of Horrible. You're not gonna believe this. I had the one, the best. It was done, it was ready to go. And then my dog ate my intro. I can sense your skepticism from here. Ask her yourself. Nina, did you eat my intro? Yeah, but why would you do that? I needed it. Well, if you put it like that, I guess that's a fair point. Yeah, I still love you. Whoa, we're halfway there. We have reached the midpoint of the season, and I would think I'm supposed to give some inspiring halftime speech about how we can pull together as a team and collectively guess this killer. Episode 4 was a cruel mistress to my theories. So we opened with a scene that I would normally kind of skim over because it's rendered inconsequential by literally the next scene, but it gives me a chance to talk about something that I meant to bring up in the first video, but it's basically just a continuation of the conversation that O'Keefe and Christy were having in the bedroom, only Afra comes down and she grabs a cork and starts eating it, and they take way too long to notice. So Afra has a disorder called pica, which basically just compulses you to eat things that aren't nutritious or aren't normally considered food. She was shown real early on in the first episode trying to eat a chip of paint, and she also tried to have a go at Flo's finger that was bitten off. Great example, Grace. And I still can't really tell if it's like a weird characteristic that they were trying to give the character or if it's actually going to have some impact on the plot at some point, but I thought I'd bring it up now. So Christy goes upstairs to find Seamus and try to reconcile the differences they just had. Because obviously she doesn't know what we know and that Seamus is already... What I didn't expect was her to go into the room and find old boy cut in half and strung up against the wall with both his eyes gouged out. And it looked great. It was a great prosthetic of Chris Jacote. I'm bad with names. Christy wigs, obviously, screams, everybody comes running in, including Afra. This poor girl is perma-scarred. The only one unfazed by the ripped remains of their relative is Vincent. And then in the middle of Christy's explosion, the bell tolls. They all go back down to the living room and we get another appearance from Cronensaw. Cronensaw explains that the next challenge will be in 7 hours in that exact room. And he says, quote, "Don't bother with those that are lost and gone." Before Cronensaw can even finish his teaser on what's to come on this week's Slashviver, Christy starts yelling, grabs a metal thing and smashes the TV in. Then the rest of the family begins to debate the words Spencer said about not worrying about those that are lost and gone and whether he meant dead and whether he is actually behind this whole thing, which I'm really glad that they decided to do that and kind of elaborate a little bit because I wasn't sure how we were supposed to take that line. I'm gonna say though it's probably on the side of Spencer not being involved considering his heart was burned through his chest. After a few rounds of some good old-fashioned accusation hurling, Grace and Brigitte decide they're going to go sleep in their own room, and Theo's trying to be the voice of reason, saying it's safer if we all stick together. Florence grabs O'Keefe and they go to their own room. The reason I bring this up is I find it interesting. I thought that a heavy theme of this season was going to be Florence's weird attachment to Vincent since he had come back, and they've kind of strayed away from that, and I'm a little disappointed. A quick Grace-Brigitte convo flashes us back to the birth of Liv. Spencer walks in and basically tells her she has a choice. Either Brigitte raises Liv on her own, and Spencer will pay for her education, but will not be recognized as a Galloway. Or Brigitte can try to claim her as a Galloway, Spencer will fire her, destroy her, raise Liv as their own, and she will never see her again. Cut to Theo and Vincent trying to take down the hung-up corpse and remains of Seamus. And I gotta say, the sound design in this scene is delightfully disgusting. Corpse falls onto Theo, and I both laughed and also kind of like did one of those, which doesn't happen for me very often, and I think that's credit to how much camera time they gave the great practical effects. Theo says a bunch of nice things about Seamus, how he was kind of like their dad because their dad wasn't around. Vincent says his family hunted and that's why he's not disturbed by all the blood and death. I don't know if that'll come back into play later. Theo says something about a twin mind meld. Vincent's resisting because he's like, hey man, we're basically strangers. Cut to a shore and, oh yes, Liv's okay. She's alive, she's all good. She finds a boat. Yeah, there's a hole in it though. She's dragging the boat away and the gentleman's stalking her. Cut to up by the boathouse, Liv is trying to figure out a way to fix it and the gentleman charges her. Great fight scene. Quick look at Liv's army combat skills as she dodges a couple of shots from the gentleman. She gets sliced in the arm and sliced in the leg. She manages to knock him against the boathouse and run away towards the house. The gentleman is in hot pursuit and I really want to point out, yo, this motherfucker is fast. Liv manages to slip through a window and into the basement, and after a quick struggle to lock the gentleman out, they have the classic final girl slasher stare down. She screams, "Who are you?" And the gentleman takes off the mask and shows us his identity. I'm just kidding, he doesn't do that. Slides his blade across the window and takes off, and then Liv hears footsteps and tracks where they went. And then right when she thinks the gentleman's about to come to the door, she opens it, and they scare each other, her and Vincent. It's just Vincent. Although I don't know why she would get scared, because she was the one timing it and opening the door. She expected somebody there, but whatever. He also admits to knowing about the passageways from when he was a kid, and I'm starting to think that everyone knows about these fucking passageways. Then we get another classic round of Galloway accusation hurling. And this one's mostly focused on Liv and Vincent. So Vincent says he was just coming down there to get a bottle of the good stuff. Then I'm going to nitpick real quick. They have a discussion about whether or not Liv's still in the competition, and it's decided that she is. And I know that Trin's not around to really decide any rules or lay down some laws, but like, if it was going to be that easy of a switch, then why even bring it up in the first place? Then we get a great Christmas flashback scene that I find cool for a few reasons. One, I really enjoyed the set deck. I'm a sucker for good Christmas lights, and I really felt like they nailed the aesthetic here. The second reason mostly being that we get a lot of solidification of characteristics of a few people. Kids are opening their presents. Theo very appreciative of whatever he's gotten, and Vincent being a little shit saying, "This is not the death laser I asked for." Spencer goes, "Here, Liv, I got you a gift," and she's all excited, and as is Brigitte, she's like, "Yeah, go get it." And it's a math kit. Straight from Germany, but a math kit because apparently she's struggling in math. Now, most people might see this as a dick move, and it is, but at the same time, for some reason, it almost feels like Spencer cares a lot about Liv. Back to Liv getting stitched up. Free gore? Yes, please. Liv tells Theo about that little incident with Vincent in the woods, but also says, don't worry, if it was that bad, he would have a broken nose. Because Liv is fucking dope. Theo then confronts Vincent about it, and they get into a heated talk. The V-Ster accuses the T-Man of wanting some of that sweet, sweet Liv action, says he has no balls, never had to fight for anything, and that it's his turn. Brigitte, creeping in the passageways, overhears Florence, Vincent, Theo, and O'Keefe talking basically about how it's us versus them. Brigitte hates us. Liv's killed for the army. She has PTSD, post-traumatic psycho disorder, which I thought was a very funny line. Theo defends Liv, and then Vincent's like, "Nah, we'll handle it." She scrambles back to Liv like Newman right out of the Monstars locker room. She tells her that they're gonna try to kill them and that they need to get out of there. Liv then tells her about the boat, says she can fix it but she needs to sleep, and that they can try to escape during the next challenge. She also says that she thinks Theo won't hurt them. And this leads to a flashback where Liv is tied up to a tree, and Theo and Vincent, mostly Vincent being the main antagonist in the situation, are trying to burn her alive. Brigitte runs up in time to save her, and as she's untying her and putting the fire out, Vincent's telling her to stop. She slaps Vincent across the face. Spencer then comes up and sides with Vincent. You might think this contradicts what I said about him caring about Liv, but I'm going to come back to this in a second. Brigitte tells the young Liv that she's going to get them away from there. And she's singing her a lullaby that transitions back to the present to her singing that same lullaby to her in what appears to be a secret room. The lullaby can be heard through the vents, and this wakes Vincent up, and he doesn't look okay. He's instantly fixated by it and begins searching, trying to figure out where the sound is coming from. Vincent finds the secret panel, and it leads him to the room where Brigitte and Liv are, and he starts questioning Brigitte about the lullaby. Why are you singing that? How do you know that? It's the lullaby my kidnapper sang me. Oh shit. Now the whole family's in the room and they're questioning Brigitte about the lullaby, which she, deflects and denies. Florence is pushing, trying to get her to confess to something with a little mind games. The weight of the guilt just causes Brigitte to confess. She set up Vincent's kidnapping. Her family kidnapped Vincent, and her plan was to use the ransom money in order to get Liv away from the Galloways. They say she's a liar because there was never any ransom demand. She says that's a lie. Spencer figured out the whole thing, got Vincent back, and then sent him away to live with the family, which explains why they're good people. And this brings me back to my point about I truly think Spencer cared a lot about Liv. And the only reason he sided with Vincent in the woods is to save face in front of Brigitte because that's just the kind of guy he is. And sure, he could see the little psychopath brewing in Vincent and definitely wanted to get him away from the influences of Florence and the rest of the fucked up family, but I definitely think that his concern for Liv's safety had a lot to do with it. Florence snaps and accuses them of being the killers, obviously. Chaos is about to ensue when Theo has the presence of mind to grab Vincent's gun and tell them to back the fuck up. They're off limits. The cops will deal with them. Convinced that Brigitte and Liv are the killers, Florence and Vincent decide that they'll have to handle the situation on their own. They both grab kitchen knives. This is the kind of mother-son bonding I was looking for from these two. They go to try to kill them and get the classic Halloween 2 of just stabbing a bunch of pillows because they're not in the room. Theo, Brigitte, and Liv are trying to escape. They're out of the house. Liv and Brigitte run towards the boat. Theo doesn't follow, and they don't notice for some reason. But it's definitely suspicious that he doesn't follow. What does follow is a scene of Liv trying to fix the boat note and saying she's going to need Brigitte to check the house and make sure no one's coming. Brigitte goes a little too far and ends up on this dock, which leads to what I think is a very well executed suspense scene. The gentleman charges at her, and we cut to Liv hearing the screams of Brigitte. Liv searches but can't find her, and then we cut to the morning. Brigitte wakes up neck deep in sand on the shore, only to see the gentleman there with a shovel to finish the rest of the burial. Brigitte, knowing this is the end of her rope, is singing the lullaby to calm herself, and it transitions into a flashback of the lullaby being sang to Vincent in the basement. Cut back to it being finished as the gentleman throws one last dump of sand on. The sand pulsates with one last breath of her life. And the episode ends. I honestly would have preferred to see, like, just a quick shovel smash, just for a punctuation, and then you get a cool shot of blood oozing up through sand. You don't even really need any practical effects. So that was episode 4. Now we gotta update our suspects list. But before we get to my eyeless and legless hung-up theories, I wanted to shout out one that was also debunked, but I thought was pretty cool. So shout out Martin Hayes, who came up with the theory that Theo actually killed Vincent when they were kids and he wasn't even really kidnapped, which would have been fun for so many reasons. So keep those theories coming, because even the ones that end up being inaccurate or wrong are still fun to explore and talk about and still a great use of creativity. And speaking of wrong theories, Brigitte, why? Why'd you do that to me? You were my lead suspect. Now you're dead. I will give myself credit, because I can say I think we are firmly established that Liv is absolutely our final girl. And I'm not gonna lie, this suspect list is throwing me off after this 4th episode. I think we're almost kind of down to just 2 potential suspects of the characters we've been introduced to. I've seen a lot of people speculate that Avra has something to do with this or is the actual killer. I haven't seen a shred of anything to really back that up, so until she has any kind of moment of actual suspicion, I'm not even going to talk about her. Remember, we're updating this suspect list, so if I've already considered people mostly ruled out, we're not going to talk about them. The reason I've narrowed it down to 2 is because the gentleman's speed. The gentleman runs really fast, and while you could argue that O'Keefe could still belong in that category, the fact that O'Keefe was with Christy when Seamus's body was getting hung up and killed is mostly, I'm not suspicious there. So of the characters we met, that obviously just leaves the brothers. We found out Vincent is a proficient hunter, which means he's good with bladed weapons. We also found out that he knows about all the passageways and has since he was a kid, and would obviously have the motivation to kill Brigitte after he found out that she was the reason he was taken away as a kid. But I will bring up a counter argument, which is, he's not blending in very well if it is him. You would think he'd try to recoil a little bit more at the sight of Seamus's corpse, instead of just being like, just another Wednesday for me. That brings us to the person who just has to be our prime suspect at this moment. There's no other choice, and that's Theo. So for starters, he obviously was with them right before the gentleman showed up, and then he disappeared and we don't see him for the rest of the episode. I'm gonna sound like a broken record, but I'm bringing up the quickness of the gentleman again. Guess who was the first person to finish that basement challenge with the pillar jumping? You bet it was Theo, and he did it pretty damn easily. And literally the only hang up I have with Theo as a suspect right now is we are still only halfway through the season, and it seems still a little too early to make Theo as a killer this damn obvious. This show's known for its twists and turns. I gotta imagine there's still a few coming. So I still have my 2 wildcard guesses on the board of Spencer's first wife Annette and possibly just the actual ghost of the gentleman, although for a ghost he seems to be able to travel pretty far off the property, so maybe not that one. I do want to talk about a theory I had the other day, which I find pretty interesting. What if there's multiple killers in this sense? Some of them know they're working together, and they're all just killing each other off. No one is actually the gentleman at a steady pace. Everyone's taking turns being the gentleman with no one actually knowing that the other people are doing it. If you think I missed anything, if you guys have any other fun theories, let me know. And until next week, my Brigitte guess is so horrible.